we have to start, I think, with the big Manchester derby. We're just out the studio on the back of that game, and God, never disappoints some of these big games, mate. And it finished Man City 3, Manchester United 1. There was a scare in the first half with a stunning goal from Marcus Rashford, Tim, as a first kind of attack, really, that United had in that first half. But 2 goals from City in the second half, Phil Foden, then Erling Haaland. Phil Foden had 2 goals, didn't it? 56th minute, the 80th minute, and Haaland's in stoppage time to win the game 3-1. Did it go pretty much, Tim, as we thought it would? I mean, we always have a call on a Thursday where the whole team and NBC team, UK and US based guys, get on and have a chat about it. And I think we all kind of thought it would be comfortable for Man City, but it wasn't really. Were you surprised at how United set up?
Oh, no, I wasn't surprised at how United set up. They did that at Anfield when everyone thought they'd get brushed aside, and they got a draw. And look, I think that's the best pathway for them to win big games is to set up deep. Bruno Fernandes said maybe a bit too deep, but you don't really have the luxury of trying to find that line. Right? Once you camp in and you have 2 blocks of 4, possibly a block of 4 and a 5, you're naturally going to go deeper and deeper and deeper. That's just how the game works, right? And so,
just on the lineup, Tim. Just like, I was a little surprised how they set up, but you weren't. I didn't see. I don't know whether you just thought that the Bruno Fernandes false 9. I didn't see that coming. I mean, Rashford's been playing up front. I know he prefers to play in a wide position. Did you just get a sense they might do that? Did you hear something from United?
Well, here's why. I thought I wasn't certain, right? But I knew that when you had Casemiro and you had Mainu at the base of the midfield, neither one of those players was going to play higher. So then, which I was hoping, Scott McTominay would eventually get himself into the starting lineup. He does. He did, yeah. Now you have 3 holding midfielders naturally, but McTominay has shown the propensity to get higher. So now I'm thinking McTominay's in there to play higher. That then pushes Bruno Fernandes to the right-hand side. That's not really where anybody wants him to be playing. So it naturally I started thinking, well, then Rashford can play one wing, Garnacho the other. Then you can kind of play a false 9. Who's the only one that really play a false 9 is Bruno Fernandes. So it was interesting. And I liked the way it was set up. It allowed them to press Rodri and press John Stones, which didn't really matter in the end because John Stones goes from center back to the forward line, which I've never seen in football. But wasn't surprised how United set up. Try to be hard to beat. Try and hit him on the break. It worked early on, but ultimately, when you're going to absorb that much pressure, that much ball retention against City, you're going to pay.
Well, there's always defining moments that we talk about all the time, Rob. Tim's in the studio or on the podcast here with Robbie Earl. Marcus Rashford's goal is a crazy goal. Like, what? I mean, I think we know he's capable of these kind of moments. How is a goal, just from a goalkeeper's point of view, he didn't get anywhere near it, Edison, who's a top-class goalkeeper. It's sometimes when somebody strikes a ball like that, not that you see it coming, but as you're diving, you're like, oh, my goodness, I'm not sure I'm going to get. It's
a courtesy dive. You just know the way he's hit it, and I know it's far out, and sometimes goalkeepers get criticized for it. It's far out, but the contact is so clean, and that ball whistles past you before you even have time to react. And once you see it, you think, okay, I'm going to push and I'm going to go here, but you're not going to get anywhere near it.
Yeah. I thought there was another moment, later on when I think Rashford had a second chance, an opportunity, by the way, before that, where he couldn't nod the ball forward.
Sure.
I mean, the whole game plan of sitting really, really deep with 2 banks of 4, with Scott McTominay and Bruno Fernandes, like inside their own half and breaking forward with Onana's long kicks, seemed to be working pretty well. Into the second half, and again, Rashford may have scored one of those chances. Now, we all know about the chances that Man City had as well. Foden goes through in the first half, Tim doesn't score. We get the crazy Erling Haaland one before half-time where he volleys it over from 1.5 yards, like crazy. Just in terms of the strategy for Man United, at half-time we're saying things like, wow, this they're doing a really good job defensively. They could break and score another goal. As the second half wore on, Tim, what do you think was the problem that Man United had in trying to stay ahead in the game?
Well, look, it's a good question. I think naturally, and I say it all the time, you can't high press for 90 minutes. You can't have all this crazy high intensity sprinting for 90 minutes. And I think there's this slight myth where if you sit in, you're conserving energy. You're actually not, because you've played in teams like that where you're going side to side, you're going pressing the ball. So you're almost exerting as much energy by quote unquote sitting deep. So ultimately, as you start to get tired, right? Man City's probing, they're looking for gaps. As United legs get tired, your mind goes. And when your mind goes, you start making wrong decisions. You open up little gaps. And by the way, City don't need very big gaps to operate and control games. And so that was, if the tactic was to sit in, that was always naturally going to be an issue, because also at the beginning of the game, it looks a great tactic. Sit in and break. You're talking about the freshest legs in the world. Okay, we can run beyond. By the time the game starts to draw on, Marcus Rashford doesn't want to run beyond. Garnacho doesn't want to run beyond because they're having to do so much defending, and so there's not a lot of freshness in the team.
Yeah, maybe that's what led to the substitutes that didn't help. I think we've got to say that. The substitutes that came into the game, Rashford came off, Garnacho came off, Mainu came off. Just back on that point, though, I remember doing it at Old Trafford, and we were lucky to get a couple of good results at Old Trafford against Man United back in the days of Middlesbrough there. And to that point, what strength I had was physical fitness, right? I could keep going doing that stuff, right?
Sure.
But to your point, others wouldn't. So they'd get tired, they'd slip a little bit, they wouldn't track runners. Do you think that's why he made those changes, thinking that Rashford's tiring a little bit on the defensive end, Garnacho's tiring a little bit? I mean, could the United fans go back, and we chatted about it on the air a little bit, Tim, could Eric Ten Hag said, you know what, get on, keep doing this. First half worked out. Yeah, like they should have tried, like get on with it. Just keep going.
I think we agree a little bit on this. Is that it's hindsight, right? But ultimately, we're sitting here talking about the changes. But when I look up and down that Manchester United subs bench, there's nobody on there that I think can change the game even remotely. And you know this as a player. Sometimes the greatest motivation for a group is to say, "I'm not taking you off. You got to hang in there. We have a result. We're still at 1-1. Let's make sure that this is what galvanizes us. This is what allows you to run the extra mile when you don't have it in your lungs." Something like that, because they made the changes, and the change, look, it's not the substitution's fault, but the fact of the matter is they just weren't going to bring anything to the game. Bunch of youngsters, big derby moment. It's a really hard position to come into the game.
Just going back on something that was a storyline before the game, and we'll switch, of course, to Man City in a second. Marcus Rashford was in the news, Tim, the Players Tribune interview that he did, and talked really well about his history and growing up in Manchester and having to get on 2 buses to go to training, and his mum helping him, and his love and his desire for the football club. I don't think we question that. There's others that might question, can he bring that out a little bit more in his performances? He scored a wonderful goal today. Where do you stand with Marcus Rashford, Tim? And I know you can be careful here about what is he one of those players that will always be a useful player, but if you expect the very top, he might not reach it for you?
I think that's right. And look, I love Marcus Rashford. I do. I like what he does on the field. I like what he does off the field. I think that the window to continue to be world-class for Marcus Rashford has passed. And I think that's okay. Let me preface this by saying I've been on teams where there's been an expectation on certain players to do more. Sometimes a manager will say, you know what, I want more from this player, so I'm going to give him the captain's armband. Guess what? We're looking around and thinking, he's not a captain. He's not a captain material, so don't force it. When I go back to Marcus Rashford, he's someone who loves the football club.
Definitely.
And because of the moments that he's had where he scored 20-plus goals in a season, you want more and you want more. Maybe what I think Marcus Rashford is a very good, useful Manchester United player who's come through the club, who's a local boy, and you know what? He'll get you 10 goals this season. Next year, he might get you 20, somewhere in between, as opposed to thinking he's going to bring you 30 goals every season. That's not who he is. No. Yeah. And you know what? He wants to play on the wing. He doesn't want to be up against defenders. He wants to find space to roam and run. And guess what? There's nothing wrong with that. I have zero time to be critical on him when maybe that's just not who he is, and that's okay.
Yeah, I think so, and I think that's probably. I think he's easier. I think I like the look of United when Rasmus Højlund was fit. Yeah. And he may be the guy that can be consistent, the tough guy that and Rashford can chip in with really important goals. I mean, it's a stunning goal he scored today. It really, really was. Before we move over to Man City, Tim, just Eric Ten Hag and where he sits, and would this be acceptable for Man United fans, that performance in this derby match? I think there's a feeling out there, and Rebecca talked about it with David Ornstein, sort of saying there isn't a ton of talk about changing the manager, Erik Ten Hag. Do you think there's anything going to be significant between now and the end of the season? Is it going to be Champions League qualification? Is it going to be better style of play? Do you think that he hasn't done anything horrifically wrong, and the new owners, well, the new partial owners will say, you know what, we're going to keep with him? What's your gut feeling on him? I
think you're judged at a different standard at Manchester United. I played it 3 years. It wasn't good enough. Now out the door. That's okay. That happens. Is Erik Ten Hag a good manager? Yeah, I think he is. Is he the manager that I think will bring Manchester United success? No. And Ineos and Sir Jim Ratcliffe, they spent a lot of money, right? They're going to make the changes they want to make. That's why they want footballing control. And they've made changes at the top. They brought in Omar Barada. There's talk of Dan Ashworth and the likes. I can see a change there simply because as we look at results, as we look at performance on the pitch and identity, we don't really see that. Ten Hag's actually spent some money, brought some players in who most of them haven't really worked. I think Martinez, in the back, unfortunately hit with injuries. He's the one we really like, but ultimately hasn't worked. So I can't imagine that we see Ten Hag probably past this season. But again, just because there's not whispers out there doesn't mean there's not work behind the scenes.
I'll put you on the spot. They're in 6th place right now. Yep. We understand that the Champions League, it might go down to 5th.
Sure.
I think I know what your answer is going to be, but can United, can they rally to catch Tottenham or Villa and get in that top 5? Which, can you imagine if we get an extra place in the Premier League and Man United finish 6th? Like that's going to be so. Yeah. Of course they want top 4 and they want higher than that ultimately, but to not finish 5th and miss out on an extra spot. Do you think they can do it?
If you ask me right now, no. Look, Tottenham have an extra game. Right, they have a game in hand, so I'm going to say
4 points.
They win that. Excuse me.
They're 4 points ahead now. And they're 6 points ahead. Sorry,
6 points ahead now.
Plus a game.
Plus that's 9. Look, the other thing is you can't take the derby in a phone booth. They got played off the park at Luton, right? But they won. Just they lost at home to Fulham, and then basically in one of their biggest games of the season, they have to sit in, defend for their lives, and try and counterattack. It's an obvious tactic that just didn't work. So, you start to question, like, one, is the manager sufficient enough? But also, how do they catch a Tottenham Hotspur who are they going to lose some games, Tottenham, between now and the end of the season? Yeah, but I tell you what, they're going to win because they score goals. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's going to be a gap that's too much.
I agree. Switching up to Man City, Tim, and I always am careful with praise for Man City because we know why. We know what's happening with them with these 115 charges that we do mention on this podcast because it is important. And I know that fans of other clubs are frustrated and get angry with the time it's taken to see if City broke many rules, which they've been edged to have done that. So I understand that and I'm sensitive to that, but I also admire the team so much and the manager, what he does, Tim, and putting that cloud away a little bit, like I said on the air earlier. You give me some of your thoughts on, if not today, but today, and just how this team finds a way. When I got to be honest, at half time I thought, you know what, maybe United can keep this going and they can get another on the counter attack, and this could be a time where City. But you were more confident than them at half time. You were like, no, they're going to turn it around, and they did. Yeah. What gave you so much confidence in that?
Well, I think they play the game. Well, let me say this. In terms of the charges and all the rest of it, those are out there and those are real. Ultimately, however you slice it, and we're going to put that to one side. This is a collection of 11 players who step on the field. This could be in a park in the middle of nowhere. This could be at Etihad. It could be anywhere. The fact that these 11 players play in a rhythm and a fashion that is like nothing we've ever seen. They play at warp speed, and when I said that, you probably look at television, you think, oh, they're kind of in control here. It's slow, it's methodical. It looks like a training session. I can tell you, when they shift gears, it's like there must be
second half.
Yeah, like 22 light blue shirts out there. It's like they're impossible to mark. They go into half spaces. They're unselfish with the ball. I mean, at one point, I was seeing passes from the big television screen there, and I'm watching them saying you should pass there, and all they did kept passing to the same person, and it was brilliant to watch. It always is, and I think what gave me that feeling at halftime was when you allow a team, any team, but particularly Manchester City, that much control and dominance over a game where you quite literally can't do anything. You can every 6 minutes or so, you can hit a long ball and someone can chase it, and you call that a counterattack. Sure, you can make something out of that, but the likelihood is when they're in that much controlled possession.
And they created good chances first half.
It's
not as though they got totally shut out and we were like applauding. Man, we gave them credit.
Yeah.
But they had a couple of like
Well, I mean,
sitters.
When you think about Phil Foden, the game he had, forget the second half. He had two shots on his right foot in the first half. Then he nods one across to Holland. So really, there was really good chances, and United could have been down at halftime. Okay, but they weren't. So the signs were there, and City usually take those signs.
Yeah, I mean, just in terms of some of the individuals today, and we've talked about the way that they play so many times. I thought John Stones was particularly good today, Tim. I know he's had injury issues. He went down in this game for a little period of time. His ability to come from centre-back now, and we kind of forget that. We kind of, we know about it, what they do, but it's kind of unusual again.
Yeah.
Usually it's a fullback that goes into inverted, goes inside, makes a midfield player, and other teams have copied that. I don't think other teams have copied the centre-back going into the middle of the park just yet.
I think you have to let's take that a step further with John Stones. I played with John Stones at Everton when he was younger, and then obviously City bought him. This is a different, as you said, this is different than an inverted fullback.
Yeah.
You're taking you're starting the game with your center back in a back four, and he's then going probably beyond the center midfielder. He's probably going into the number 10 position. And also, if you and I knew nothing about football, and we tuned in and someone said that number 5 is a center midfielder, you go, oh, he's really, really good.
He's really good.
You wouldn't think twice.
No, you would not.
And the way he rolls the ball, manipulates it, and finds a pass and stays on it, it's impressive.
I think the other player, of course, that was going to grab the headlines is Phil Foden, Tim, and you know that Haaland missed and then scored later on, but Phil Foden's kind of improvement to a player what he is today is pretty remarkable. And I, again, I know there's a lot of technical players at Man City that are really comfortable on the ball. You have to be that way to be playing with Pep, but it's that eye for goal that. It sets him apart.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether you have a thought on that, Tim. But it's like Bernardo Silva, he's got an eye for goal, but doesn't. Jack Grealish is different again. Stays wide, links the play really, really well. I mean, you can go through the whole team like Kevin De Bruyne, assisting machine. But Phil Foden, he always seems to get opportunities to score. Do you have a sense of what is it in a player that makes him close to goal? Apart from his brilliant technique, but he wants to get close and score goals.
Well, I think it's the genius of him and players like him, where you have to have good technical ability, you have to have good physical ability, but you have to have football IQ, right? And that means making the right decisions, making the right pass, but it also means for a player like him who is so goal dangerous. All the good players think 1 and 2 steps ahead. That's why you can step across the lines and play, right? Game's fast. You got to be able to think 2 and 3 passes ahead. I believe players like him are thinking 2 or 3 passes ahead, but they're also thinking, how do I, not a pass in and a pass on the overlap. How can I get myself there between the posts? And that's where his mind, I can do the other business. Tim Howard can say, I can roll it into the middle of the park, or I can pass it to the wing. The hard part is if I go inside, where can I find the next space to get in a scoring position? That's more difficult.
Yeah, it was a remarkable game for him, Phil Foden. Yeah. Great comeback, Tim, and it immediately gets you thinking about the title race as we look at the table now. And Liverpool found a way to win, which we'll go on to in a second. Man City did today. We've got Arsenal playing tomorrow against Sheffield United. Is it ominous for the others? Is this all what we expected? Is there anything that you see in Man City that might say this year could be different? I mean, it seems from our point of view, we've seen this movie before. Pep finds a way, and there's one player injured in Jack Grealish, and Liverpool have got many. Arsenal have got a few. Anything different that you see with City that would give Liverpool and Arsenal hope that they won't finish as strong as they normally do?
No,
it's hard. I mean, it's hard, isn't it?
I think the mentality in the dressing room in Liverpool with Klopp and Arsenal with Arteta has to be not hopeful. I don't think these two teams can go, we hope that Man City aren't the same as years previous. Let's try and figure out a way that we can be stronger. And they've shown that, both Liverpool and Arsenal. It's going to be one heck of a title race. I think that, when I look at City's next couple of games, I know that they have Liverpool to come and Villa to come and Arsenal at some point. So, all within like the next month. And so it's easy to sit here and say, let's wait till then. But there's going to be drop points. There's going to be drop points. And I think as we look at the top 3 right now, and we look back on the season, it's going to It's going to be one surpassing the other week to week, and that's why this is so fun, because none of them are going to be really out of it at any point, right? Because there's just so many big games to come that you can't see any of these teams really taking all the points, all the spoils. The one thing I will say about City is they are the only team that's proven to be able to run the gauntlet and say, yeah, we've just rattled off a double-digit unbeaten run. None of the other teams can say that. Not down the stretch.
No.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch more videos all season long. And for even more Premier League content, from original series to live matches, head over to Peacock. And be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend on USA Network and on Peacock. We will see you there.